Okay, good morning. Ni hao. That's it, that's the most Chinese you're getting. Welcome back to the second session of the day. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Christopher Ludwig. I'm the editor of Automotive Logistics magazine. Or you don't know me, you don't recognize me because I'm getting so old every year, obviously, here. So that's the magazine you actually will have received in your delegate packs, or you read it online, hopefully. We have links. We have a Chinese newsletter that we send out for those of you who'd like to read a Mandarin version. And let me just make the point up front that I'm always open and interested to hear stories from you, to pick up news. So please find me and keep in contact with me as much as you can. I think we had a great session. Well, I guess just a few housekeeping notes briefly. Again, we will have simultaneous translation. The presentations will be in English or Chinese. You can ask your questions afterwards. We will definitely have time for Q&A in this session, I believe. So if you don't have a headset or you need it, then you can get it just at the entrance to the conference hall. We'll probably run this session until around about 1:45 or so, pushing a little bit later than we had planned for, and we'll probably take a little bit of time off of lunch, but there'll still be plenty of time for lunch and networking as well. So our first session was very high level, I think. Lots of interesting macroeconomic forecasts and trends, a lot of important policy direction that we heard from CFLP, from the NDRC, from the Dealers Association, and also some mega trends, whether it's autonomous vehicles, connected cars, electronics melding into the automotive industry. So I think all of those things are very important for you to keep in mind, particularly in China with things like e-commerce becoming so important. But in this session now, I think we're going to start to connect some of the, let's say, theory and macro stuff into the industry that you all work in and deal with on a more day-to-day level. As you've heard many times already, the theme of this conference is big to strong. We don't have to spend too much time explaining how big the Chinese automotive industry is or how big the Chinese automotive supply chain is. It's big, it's messy, it's complex. Parts and vehicles move through from many different points, through processing stages, all kinds of complicated things, but maybe not always in the most efficient way. Maybe sometimes things are done because they've always been done that way, or for historic reasons. So really what we want to encourage, or at least this session is aiming to set out, is developing a supply chain strategy, a more of an end-to-end focus, a more holistic view of the supply chain, where we're not just looking necessarily at individual pieces of it. If we're going to optimize the supply chain, we have many tools at our disposal, whether that's IT, whether that's big data, whether it's a lot of engineering that can be involved. And clearly this is already happening in China, but obviously this is part of the next phase of growth. I mentioned IT and technology, but obviously a very important part of the supply chain strategy is also human resources and the human capacity and assets. So things like training and skills and retention is also critical, and I think those are topics that I'm sure you're all dealing with in your day-to-day jobs, and I'm sure which we can discuss a bit with our panel as well. So let me introduce our panel to you, because we have a great sort of mix here from different areas of the supply chain, different levels of expertise. First, we'll hear from Long Jin, who's the AP Senior Manager of Supply Chain for Visteon Asia Pacific, of course a very important Tier 1 supplier. Then we'll hear from Hande Ari, who's a supply chain solutions specialist from Wallenius Wilhelmsen Logistics, of course one of the major shipping lines and vehicle logistics solutions provider globally as well as in China. And then last but certainly not least, Jason Xu, who's the sales director in China for GEFCO, again, very important global automotive logistics and indeed supply chain provider to many industries. So without too much further ado, I'd now like to invite Ms. Long to give her presentation.
Okay, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The topic of my presentation today is the crossover thinking or mentality of auto supply chain. I worked in this industry for over dozens of years, not only for German companies but also for American companies. Also, I've been working for JV companies between China and Germany or China and America. According to my experiences for the past few years, I feel that the strategy for the supply chain management in China is quite clear and quite consistent. That is lean. Lean is the key word. The so-called lean is to seek limit. What do I mean by seeking limit? Because for most of the time we've been looking for the gap between budget and reality. We've been identifying the gap between the predictions and also the budget together with the reality. So whenever we have identified a gap, then we will try best to minimize the gap or to bridge the gap. Probably we can pay about 100 RMB yuan to find a gap, or probably we can pay even higher to identify the gap between the two. But anyway, we've been working all the time and searching high and low for this gap. So there could be a final tricky point of balance. But whether or not there could be an infinite process, I'm not so sure. The topic I'm proposing here today is whether it is possible for us to expand our horizon a little bit, rather than purely focusing on supply chain alone. We can do some crossover things in order to really broaden our horizon. From the crossovers perspective, it is not a new term to you. So here you can see Mr. Xu Zheng, a famous director in China, who used to be an actor and now he is a really accomplished director. Madam Zhao Wei also follows the same pattern. For the auto industry, also we have some typical cases and classical cases, like the Musk has a special team to build Tesla. Many people have mentioned that Tesla is very likely to be acquired by Apple. For Android, it is also making their foray into the electronically powered vehicle sector. And also Gucci Fiat 500, LV Cadillac, the Volkswagen Tiantian flying car as an online game. So they've been working together from different disciplines across the board. So you can see we have a lot of successful cases ahead of us, and a very tiny few seems to be a failure. But on a general perspective, we've been working in the direction of doing some crossover between the two. But from the supply chain's perspective, what do I really mean by crossover? The essence of crossover for our industry is to provide quality services of the supply chain for the purpose of gaining high profit products or projects. So to be more specific, I have the following three key messages to deliver. First of all, to benchmark advertising industry products image. Secondly, to benchmark against the service industry service level. Thirdly, is to benchmark against the big data application of the telecom industry. So it is because of these areas that provided inspirations for us to realize the real crossover. We need to have a correct positioning of our industry. So for the customers, for the clients, for the mass public, on first sight, they can instantly tell what is really meant by a supply chain and how can we expect to deliver a certain type of performance from the supply chain. Also, the ultimate goal of this industry is to serve the customer's needs. So whether the servicing capacity or capability is really at par with the generic service industry. Thirdly, the telecom industry is important. For auto supply chain system, it's really a huge and a massive scale, and we need to identify the real truth from the analysis of C data. Many conferences were held in the past where probably we do not use the system or data to prove a certain argument. Sometimes we're just blinded to see what the truth should be. So in this connection, I think big data is important and relevant to point to more accurate application of data. I think first and foremost, positioning is important. Now, like ZF acquiring Tianhe, becoming even stronger. This is a one channel or one model. Secondly, those non-performing sectors have been sold out, which turn out to be the second way out. And what we should do is to focus on the auto electronics, and we need a supply chain to cope with the future growth. And also in the marketplace, we have a lot of software. Whenever we are managing the supply chain, we will normally import or introduce a certain type of software in order to address a certain type of problems. It is what we call problem-triggered software introduction. So at the end, you can see so many software jamming into this small space. But whether or not we really need so many software applications, probably the supply chain automation means the cost increase as well. So I think the business needs to be aware of the fact that what type of level of automation is more suitable to your company. And that has to be more relevant if you put this important issue in the context of a cost-effective analysis. So can we think of a way to move upward where we can, on the one hand, improve the degree of automation of supply chain, and on the other, to improve the margin, the profit margin for the investment of our projects, or ROI? Also, I want to say a few words about visualization or visualization management, because I think this is important for advertising industry to be a success. For Taobao, the first TVC or TV commercials was broadcasted. Each piece of TVC serves as a very important and a strong visual impact. We've been busy executing different type of routine jobs, but how to visualize the entire supply chain, and based upon that, we can seek to add some colors or some animations, so to speak. This is something that we can learn from the advertising industry by combining visualization with dynamic delivery, also with the colorful presentation. So for water to flow from higher altitude to a lower altitude, it should be quite fluid, quite dynamic, and changeable. Sorry. I want to give you an example. For the inventory of the spare parts, inventory of the automotive company, normally we will have this graphic hang on the wall. This simply shows you that indeed, well, okay, we have these processes, we have these procedures, but how to dynamize this system? So that means that we need a certain type of flow that follows a certain direction. Eventually, we can identify the root of the problem. So this is the visual representation of the whole diagram. So it could look like this instead of the only words and the processes. And sometimes you can expect some applause from the watchers who can really expect to benefit from this way of representation. So can we shift to the next slide? 1 second. Cognition. And also I want to mention about 1 second recognition or cognition, meaning whether at first sight it can tell you what your supply chain is doing now and whether your supply chain can fully disclose the entire operation of the whole business. For example, for the stock system or the inventory system, many plants are expanding their inventories, but normally they use their own technical people or engineers to design the layout of the inventory. But probably we can think of introducing some concepts from industrial design sector. It is not too costly, but it can help you to have a new understanding or fresh look about the inventory. Probably could be more colorful, much brighter, plus some special management officials with some smart way of using the space, designing the human-centric ways or routes within this inventory. So that probably will change the original intention or the impression of the people who normally will pay visits to the inventory. And also, we face so many manufacturers and the customers. Sometimes they are from Germany, some from Europe, some from America, some from China. Different people may have different requirements, but whether we have already put into place a certain system where we can identify these customers at first sight. Whether within your own internal evaluation and assessment system, the customer can really expect their demands to be met. So these are some of the thinkings I have in this connection. Now I want to say a few words about the customer service performance. I want to raise 3 points. First of all, to serve our customers as kings. Well, this king-like customer mentality is something that we all have to work on. And secondly, we have to mind the details. We have to be born with a special care for details. Thirdly, we need to provide a flexible pricing. for the servicing our customers as kings or as gods, literally in Chinese. That means whether our customers can have everything they need and whether we can expect to resolve all the problems for the after-sales sector. Of course, after-sales occupies a very small part of the whole chain, but still occupies a really big position. Servicing the customer's heart and soul should be carried out strictly and unconditionally. I think that these are some of the thinkings for your reference. I will skip the details here. For the second aspect, detailed delivery, I think some detailed plans need to be put into place, especially when it comes to on-time, unconditional info delivery of your products and services. For example, have you ever distributed a questionnaire to the clients to collect the information from these customers about whether or how they feel about serviced by our company? Whether or not they have some video checking system to check the real situation of the transportation of the goods and the commodities, whether they have any CCTV system to check each and every detail or the link of the delivery system. For the price issue, probably we can learn a lot from the karaoke industry where they provide different prices during different times, like a peak price or non-peak hour price. And for the logistics industry, I think that we can establish a link between the temporal fluctuations or variabilities with that of the price adjustment. Price should not be always the same. It can fluctuate according to the different situations of the external environment. So both sides can deliver some compromise to ensure that we can work for the benefit of each one. And probably we can devise some mechanism where we can give you some price discounts or some preferential policies in case of being given a certain longer realm or range of predictable time slots for the delivery. And this chart shows you how we make use of the IoT or the application of internet technologies. Different types of sensors can be connected with the mass and generic internet. That represents the future trend. From the data perspective, data collection is very important. Of course, that has to go together with the infrastructure sophistication and the governmental support. Whether the business can be authorized to open their data system to the outside is another big problem. Also, like the sharing, integration of data, the integration platform of information can also make things more complicated.
Well, from a data coordination, we need to take a look at the cloud service. We need to have a public platforms for the sharing of data. There are 4 points to consider. I think a private cloud is more conducive to data cloud, and the OEM and third-party logistics have a strong desire and motives to establish a proprietary cloud. And the competitive relationship between the suppliers is a resistive force toward the coordination of big data. And fourthly, the light company's IT infrastructure is a strong magnet to big data coordination. I think the big data must be effective to the forecast of trend, to the management of supply networks, and to the improvement of the operational process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, 谢谢. Thank you very much, Ms. Long, Ms. Jin. That was a very interesting presentation. I think any opportunity to kind of look across industries and look for new ideas is always very welcome, particularly in the automotive supply chain. I hadn't particularly thought about the karaoke one before, so I think that's one that we at Automotive Logistics conferences will probably take on. So perhaps we can have Louis sing Little Apple tonight for all of you to perform. So if those are just as an incentive to come to the event later. Next up, I'd like to now invite Hande Ari from WWL.
All right. 我叫 Hande， 我在上海办公室工作。
My name is Hande. I worked with the Wallenius WW Logistics.
Providers and tier suppliers. It's a really good pleasure being here and to talk about supply chain strategy. My name is Hande. I work in Shanghai office at WWL, and I'm in charge of supply chain solutions, focusing on finding alternative logistics way how we can actually achieve the more optimized solutions. And my customer wise is I'm responsible for global connected to China. So now we do business in an environment where actually supply chains compete, not companies. I think it's a very important statement which actually shows how important OEMs set their supply chain strategy based on it. Because now supply chain strategy is more gaining competitive advantage and to be more competitive in the environment. This is one of your strengths. So before actually I move to my PPT, first I think we a little bit talk about what supply chain strategy stands for. And owing to well-regarded professor Martin Christopher states that supply chain strategy defines the combination of activities and functions throughout the value chain. So here also I think we need to pay attention that why it's not supply chain, it's value chain. Because throughout the chain we are trying to bring value. And however, today I'm here to talk about finished vehicle logistics. So what this statement refers for finished vehicle supply chain is that your supply chain strategy is the way, method of operating all these activities from factory to dealer, which are actually your from point of origin and from to point of destination. And it's here we should highlight that we need to have systems approach. System approach here tells us that the system should be seen as a whole, not separately. Because what you do in the beginning of the supply chain, it affects what's going to happen at the end of the supply chain. So here we definitely need to pay attention to look our chain as a whole. And apart from that, as we are talking here systems approach, we are talking the whole chain. Of course, sometimes we need to make some decisions which actually come up here with trade-off. We need to do some trade-off. Mainly, it's between cost and quality. And here, what about your supply chain connected to China? If you're here, if you participate in this conference, which means that one part of your supply strategy is connected to China. So basically, your factory could be in China or somewhere else, all around the world, and you might use ocean transportation to link it, or you can use multimodal transportation. And the point of your destination should be again in China or somewhere else in the world. So basically what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to actually show the whole picture of the supply chain to you. And here I just a little bit give a very overview about China automotive market, what actually makes China so excited for players in this automotive market. Actually in the first session you received some very valuable information, but now we are in the market where almost 24 million cars were sold last year, and also based on the research, 30 million cars will be sold by almost 2020. So it still shows that the growth has been continued steadily, and of course it's obvious that it brings lots of opportunities for everyone in the automotive market, but at the same time, of course, it brings some challenges. Here is just an overview, and this is our basic thought as a company. What actually the main challenges are if you're in China market, and we see that in the market is lack of standardization. We don't set rules, or if we have different providers, we don't work with them in the same way which we work with one of them. And the other is then, as I told you, China market is great, and everyone would like to take a piece of from this pie. So the competition is very fierce, but actually what I would like to highlight is that the market is very cost-driven. And what actually makes you that if you want to actually survive in the market, you really need to reduce your costs. So this also becomes a very actual challenge for us. And the other thing is lack of control. Actually, I will come and I will talk about it a lot in following slides when we look at our whole chain. And when it comes to market players, we see that in China there are lots of market players. Even they are small, but they're so strong. So actually, it really makes the competition very, very actually hard for us to survive. And on the other hand, unfortunately also, we are a little bit lack of visibility. And again, it's gonna come up with strategy why we need to have visibility. And if you have the visibility, if we see the whole chain, and what kind of benefits actually we can take. And later here, inland transportation, I would like to just highlight here that in China, if you talk about inland transportation, definitely the focus point is trucking. And we see that it's because of capacity problem, as real transportation providers or barge transportation providers unfortunately cannot meet this demand, and we hope that in the future it will be developed. All right, here where I'm gonna actually talk about our factory deal and actually where our journey starts, because we are the ones here who manage the supply chain, not only us. And so here, seeing the whole picture, I can actually also show here on the stage. Let's say you're responsible for ocean transportation. This is what you see, and this is what you see off the lake. But how about the others? Do you know what's actually happening? Okay, maybe product from port of loading to port of destination. However, actually, when you little bit go deeper, and when you look at a little bit deeper, you will see it's a huge chain. It's not just only about your ocean transportation or inland transportation. So here the main message I would like to give is that as I also just talked, we need to see the chain as a whole, and it's maybe a little bit taking ownership. Maybe you are responsible for ocean transportation. However, maybe, okay, rate is very important, but what's going on inland side, or what's going to happen in technical side? And if you talk about as we are a rural company, but at the same time, of course, our customers use container. But if you are using container, do you know actually what should be done based on inland side? Because there are significant differences. All right. So we talked about that we have an objective, and we would like to transport one finished car from factory to dealer. So we know what we need to do, we know our objective, and obviously we do the right things. But the question is, do we do the things right? There is very big difference between the two sentences. Maybe we reach our objective, we want to transport one car and we send it to the dealer. However, it doesn't mean that we do the things right, which actually highly related to our efficiency. And where it starts our journey here. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show each leg of this supply chain, and I will a little bit mention about our main objectives. So on factory compound, we have two main objectives. The first one is that this is very, very critical. We need to make sure that we are handling over the perfect products. Otherwise, at later stage, you need to bear rectification cost actually, which is very, very high, and it might be almost 40% of your total supply chain cost. And on the other hand, also if we work, this also recently actually has been seen by OEMs that the production plant has very now close collaboration with the logistics provider or the provider who is managing the in-plant very closely, so they know when exactly the unit should be take over and sent to dealers. So whereby we can reduce our inventory cost and also we can minimize our idle time in the factory. And the second step, now the units are on the way and we need to make the transportation to send it to the port of loading. And during transport from factory, of course, the most importantly is that the quality of the transport, because if there is any damage, again, I think I'm going to say damage in every step of the supply chain. And here also it's very important, we need to ensure that the logistics provider are highly qualified and there will be no damage in next steps. And furthermore, here also I would like to give emphasis that not just, we shouldn't just focus on trucking, also we need to a little bit consider intermodal transportation as well. So it's going to give flexibility to us, because we know that demand is not the same during all the year. Sometimes it's reached peak season and we have some capacity problem where actually we can find transportation, intermodal transportation modes as a solution here. And now the cars are in the terminal. And now we disload them and now they're in the terminal. And here what's important is that it should be ensured that the terminal has qualified stevedores which can make the movements and handled at the best practice. So we need to know that our products are on the way, on time, and in shape. Here also, moreover, also we can here a little bit talk about that. Also, again, close integration with shipping floor, like in the factory, also is very important because also it can has some effects for the storage in the terminal. And now we're in the ocean transport part. Here, the most is again, I think, damage, and because as when I'm talking all the time, there is one movement and handling of the units. So the ocean transportation provider should ensure that they minimize this handling and movement. So they need to really good at stowage planning and also lashing, which actually even you're not aware of it, but if there is any wrong, they should handle them. They need to move the product inside of the vessel. All right. And next step, now our units reach to the destination. Now they're in the place where actually dealers and end users are. So destination port processing makes your units ready to be received by the dealer. So they need to ensure that they can do pre-delivery inspection. They can do some battery accessory things. And on the other hand, if you would like to be more responsive to the market, which we see actually in Southeast Asia, units actually are going to Southeast Asia from China. And based on the customer requests, what actually is you actually build and rebuild the unit. You put some other you put some other stuff as well inside of the unit. So here, destination port processing centers also are very important. And again, here we need to provide inland transportation service here. And again, it could be multimodal inland transportation, or you can use trucking. And here, I think we need to emphasize on the just-in-time delivery because it's very critical for our dealer. As you know, what they promise to the customer, they need to deliver it. Otherwise, it can end up being, unsatisfaction of the customer. So here, I think we should emphasize on the just-in-time delivery. And at the last stage, so now our units are received by the dealer, and we really let the dealer do what they are actually good at, which is selling the units. So as if we can have a seamless journey to the dealer, it's clear that dealer also don't need to deal with anything later, rectifying any damage and other stuff. Here, I think this is maybe the most important slide which I would like to give it to you, network optimization. I'm sure you have heard of this term recently a lot, network optimization. Network optimization basically maps out of your supply chain, and you see the product flow, and you see where the units are going or what's origin of the units. And network optimization maps out this process, and it shows that as this situation, and after that it gives some recommendations to you, and it says that actually maybe the way you do is not the best one, it's not the optimal one, and it shows that how you can actually make your supply chain more efficient in terms of cost, time, quality, and efficiency. So here is a little bit recap. If we have from factory to dealer strategy, we definitely have better control of and efficiency. As I just showed the map, you will see everything, from the point of origin, from point of the destination. And it, of course, leads you manage your suppliers in better way, and you have more streamlined procurement, because you can see, non-value, it's basics non-value items inside of your supply chain, and you can make it more streamlined. And later, of course, it definitely has a highly impacted on your cost, and at the same time also bottom line, you can reduce your operational cost, and of course higher speeds. I think here I need to focus on that we are in automotive sector, so which is that we need to be very responsive to the customer, because they don't want to wait. So we need to be really responsive, and our supply chain should be really fast. So I would like to end up with my presentation with a quotation from Ian Robertson from BMW. He says that we need to embrace new thinking. The industry has a great past. It's our job to create a great future. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Hande. I think, again, as I mentioned kind of at the beginning of the session, trying to take a really complete view of the supply chain and areas like network optimization, all the tools at our disposal. So that was a very good overview of some of the potential, obviously, on the finished vehicle side globally as well as in China. And we'll come on to some more of that during the Q&A, I'm sure. But our last presentation, before we open it up for questions, I'd like to invite Jason Xu from GEFCO China.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason. I'm from GEFCO China. The panelist has presented their point of view from the crossover and from the supply chain strategy on finished vehicle. I will present on a more operational way down to multimodal solution, what we can do on the multimodal solution for the automotive supply chain. So, this is my presentation. We'll have basically 3 parts. So before I talk about multimodal solution, I will give a very brief introduction about what is multimodal solution. And then to help you better understand a multimodal solution, I will explain a real case that GEFCO we are doing for the multimodal solution. In the end, it's very important that what we can do in China, and I will share with you our experiences and our project that we did in 2014 for the multimodal solution. Okay, here we go. Okay, multimodal solution, okay, we can say it's a combined real transport, that is more than one transport mode by connected to the rail, and you have different transshipment points, either with road or ocean. Okay, so now this is a supply chain, automotive supply chain. We have road freight, we have ocean and air, and also we have different activity like warehousing, finished vehicles, and inbound logistics and spare parts. So if we take an angle from the real freight or multimodal, how can we see the supply chain? How can we change the supply chain strategy for the automotive? Okay, so before I elaborate, I think it's very important to understand what is the key player in the multimodal solution. This is our analysis from our European colleague. Okay, for the multimodal, first of all, we're talking about rail. We need to have the network, the track, 轨道. And also we need to have the locomotive, the shuttle, a railway company that you can move all the cargo. So now comes three types of different logistics company. So we have the combined operators. Combined operators have a blockchain, have a fixed schedule from terminal to terminal, providing all the services. And then we have the multiple carrier. Multiple carrier is provided mainly by the services from operator, and then arrange the pre-carriage and on-carriage. Okay, this is multiple carrier. And then in the last, we have the free forwarder. Free forwarder is more like a brokerage. He buy all the services, door-to-door services from the multiple carrier or the operator. Okay, so then comes the question. So if we want to develop a multiple solution or capability, what it will be required? So we think the logistics providers are able to handle, to play the same role. Freight forwarders, multiple carrier, or combined operators are able to provide more engineering or customization services for the customers. So I will explain to you why these three types of companies play a different role. Okay, so now explain to you on the multimodal. Now I'll give you a live example on multiple solution. Okay, and this is a business case we do for MAN. For MAN Truck is now part of the Volkswagen Group, and the customer they have a joint venture in Uzbekistan, right here, and they have is for the truck SKD assembling. It's assembly plant. They have two suppliers. Actually, it's also their plant. One in Germany and one in Austria. Supply the SKD part from here to Uzbekistan, their plant. This is the challenge that when we are facing to take over the business. First of all, is lead time. They need less than 30 days. And then is high volume fluctuation. This is really a challenge. Sometimes they can ship 40 containers. Sometimes just can ship a few containers. So you need to manage all the fluctuations. And then you need a very competitive total cost. They have a very budget for all the package. Then you have to track all the containers, empty container management, and the daily tracking. And then is high level requirement. So let's see how we can design this business for our customers. Sorry. Okay, this is our solution. We utilize three modes of transport. For the main carriage, so we use Hamburg as a port. So we use the short sea. From Hamburg to Riga is Latvia. We use the short sea, is ocean. Then from Riga, the port, we move to the rail. We use the direct link to rail, move the containers to the nearest terminal close to the plant. If you look at the pre-carriage and on-carriage, we use truck for the pre-carriage and the rail for the Austria. And in the end, is from the railway terminal to the plant. Okay, so this is a broad view. To understand a multimodal solution, you can see we have the rail as the main carriage, the most important part, and we have the short sea on the ocean to connect to our rail. And then we have the pre-carriage, is the truck and the rail. Okay, I think here I want to explain to here is the challenge is here. The different role as a combined operator or multiple carrier is different. Because as I explained, the volume fluctuates a lot. Sometimes it's blockchain, sometimes less. So sometimes we work as an operator, so we can have our own blockchain directly from Riga to the terminal. And sometimes it's less containers. We play as a multiple carrier. We book space from other operators. So then you can have a really combined solution to the customers. So let's look at the result. Now we achieved 28 days on the lead time. And last year, we moved 1,043 containers for the whole year. And then we have achieved the budget. It's very competitive rate. And there's one important thing that we can deliver to the customer, that we can help them to remove the empty container return. Sometimes before that, they have to pay a lot for the empty container return. Then we have flexible solution. As I mentioned, we don't have a minimum requirement to the customers. And then we have a secure solution. We can fix our supply chain, fix our lead time. And then we have the daily reporting. And just thanks to this project, last December, so we got the award from the automotive supply chain as the best rail company last year. So here is a very typical example of multiple solution. Now, let's see how we can do in China. How many options do we have? And last year, we did a lot on the project study and work with customer, the customization engineering. So if you look at the multiple solution, look at China, have a global picture, we think there are 3 flows that we can be working on. First of all, we can think about Europe to China as inbound, okay, because we still have a lot of inbound flow from the Europe. And then we can have the outbound. From China, export a lot, finished vehicles, production parts to the CIS country and the Europe. And then we can also do in China as a domestic rail, how we can do. So I will give you our studies, one example, in each of the 3 flows. So let's start with the Europe to China inbound. Okay, this is the project we did for a car OEM. Okay, it's for the finished vehicle distribution. Now before that, they have as Shanghai and Guangzhou for the port entry on ocean freight on Ro-Ro, and then distribute to the West China on the truck, the standard truck, the trailer trucks. And this is their current flow. So let's see how we can do our multiple solution is we use the rail from Germany, from the Duisburg to Chongqing. This is very popular now on this Visteon route. And then from Chongqing, that we can distribute to its dealers in the West China. Okay, this is our solution, and we did a trial shipment last year. And let's do a comparison on the 2 different models to see what is the benefit or what is the strategy for the customers. So in terms of the lead time, in this business model, normally door-to-door from to the dealers, normally 50 days. Okay? In these solutions, we can cut half, 25 to 27 days, because it's a new port of entry for them to directly into the Chongqing, the West China. And then now that this is only beginning, I think the strategy for them is we can use that as a hub for the future distribution, to cover the West China with we are also building a project working on now is for a terminal. It's a bonded terminal that's close to railway, that's to build up stock and then distribute to dealers. And then another important thing, if you look at these 2 proposals, that we can help the customer to reduce the stock level, because this is really important, especially on the market fluctuates a lot. And this is a business case that we did for the finished vehicle. I think it's the same that we can do for the spare parts, for the other, using the Chongqing as a hub to distribute at railway, to distribute to cover the West China, instead of using the East China as the port entry and then distribute to the West. Okay? And then let's see how we did for the export from China to Europe or CIS country. This project that we did is for a Chinese OEM for its exported car distribution from China to Russia. Okay, this is the current flow. Because Russia is huge, is big, so they separate its flow in two flows. For the east part of Russia, they call the Siberia. They use the rail to the Manchuria, and then from here, they use truck delivered to its dealer in the Siberia. And they also have dealers in the middle of Russia, they call Ural area. They use the ocean, and then to the Kotka in Finland, and then distribute to its dealer on truck. Okay, this is the solution. Let's say how we can, and we design this solution for the customer, is we combine the two flow into a rail, into multimodal, that we move all the car on rail, a blockchain, to the Manchuria. Then we use rail by leveraging our mother company RGD on the rail. We set up two hubs, two terminals in Novi Spek and Ekaterinburg. This is in the east and in the middle. So we the blockchain delivered to our hub, and then we distribute on trucks. Okay, this is our solution. Let's see the difference. Okay, you can see from this solution. This is very competitive. We can reduce the lead time by 5 to 15. Even for this area, we can reduce by 20 days. Just think about the ocean freight. It's a long way, and then trucking is also take time. Okay, and also it's cost saving. It can have a 10% cost saving compared with current ocean plus truck, because trucking in Russia is very expensive. And it's a full visibility on the distribution, because the customer here can monitor its distribution to its dealer from China. They can see all the full visibilities. And it is also very important for the customer that they can change their business model, because at the moment it's consignment. Now, in the near future, they can build up stocks here as their hub, as distribution, to reduce their response time to their dealers. So you can see this is a really big difference. We are re-engineering their supply chain for the finished vehicle distribution. So, okay, last is for domestic. Domestic, we are still focusing on the finished vehicle distribution. So now at the moment, especially for the OEM plant in North China, if they want to cover the West China, normally they use the truck. Okay, it's a 飞机板 or kind of auto deliver truck. Okay, to move from here. There's a lot of damages, some of the issue, and also especially since last year, Sichuan province has more restricted to limit those on illegal trucks. So it's getting more challenging. That's why we make the proposal is using rail. So we have a terminal in Tianjin, close to the railway, and then move the finished cars to 3 terminals based on the customer needs: Chongqing, Chengdu, and Kunming. Then from the 3 terminals, so we can move on trucks, deliver to its dealers. Okay, let's see how can it make much difference. For the lead time, it really depends on the business. Sometimes we can use blockchain, can be much shorter than the current flow is on the trucking. And we also did analysis based on the current market prices. It also can achieve 10% cost saving, because at the moment, the trucking price is already very cheap at the moment. It's very difficult to reduce the price anymore. So only you can think out of the box. From the multimodal, you can try to do it. And then it's also the same, that as I mentioned, Chongqing is our strategic point to be our hub for the distribution in West China. And then, as I mentioned, it's also a less damage. We also did this analysis. Because if you do move the truck finished vehicles on the rail, will be less transshipment. So it can help significantly reduce the damages. Okay, now that I have a quick summary, so we have presented, so see, on a different way what we did for the multimodal solution. So before I end, I just give you a quick brief introduction of our company. So why we can do it is because at GEFCO, we have 60 years working experience on the multimodal solution, starting from 1951. And then we now managing 200 European lines and 400 wheel wagons in Europe. Now that with our new mother company is AZD Russian Railway. Okay, this is our new mother Russian Railway. It's now the second largest network rail company. And just for information, on the current China to rail is 50% of the route is managed by Russian railways. And in the end, to conclude, let's say we want to position ourselves to really deep into our customer supply chain to develop the most adapted multiple solution by considering your scope and integration. Because this is where I think we can move forward. And in the end, this is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Jason. Well, there you had, very real, concrete case studies, examples of multimodal solutions that are happening, or at least have been trialed, to give you some ideas from some of the potential. We've heard also from our other speakers, also from some real life examples. So we do have some time, I believe about 15 minutes or so for Q&A, for questions, where I'll have my staff in the back with microphones. So if anyone has a question, you can ask it in English or Mandarin. If you just raise your hand, say your name and company, if I can see you. And if you're still sleeping, I have questions. So I'm afraid you're not going to get to lunch any earlier just because you're being lazy. So if there's no questions, I'll start with one. It's kind of a general one, but you all touched on kind of joined up thinking and supply chain optimization. But what would you currently point to as what you see as the biggest area of waste in the supply chain that you're managing, whether that's, or you can flip it to the biggest opportunity, I suppose, for optimization. But can you give us some examples in China where you see a particular area of waste right now? Anyone can take that one. Anybody who wants it. But yes, Hande, how about it's to you?
All right. So can you just repeat it, like basically how we can optimize some reference cases?
Yeah, I would just say, for example, you talked about needing to see the whole supply chain. Yep. So, are you finding areas of waste that you're seeing in China right now where obviously customers aren't particularly looking across?
Recently, actually, it has been seen, like, when we look at a little bit in the past, what we see is that most of OEMs actually were more willing to collaborate with separate providers. One, focusing on inland transportation, one focusing on ocean transportation. However, when you work with one supplier, enabling, providing, one actually integrated services, actually you can take benefit of lots of opportunities. As I just talk visibility, it's actually very, very crucial. I can give one example, such as if you have the information when your unit, load on the vessel, and if this information is going to your dealer, basically, actually, even during that time, during transit time, they can even sell your car. And if I need to give one example, like from China, we work with one of our customers, we actually used to transport their units from Europe and to China. And after we weren't the inland transportation provider, but what we observed is that the units actually were coming to China with the damage. And after we a little bit, went to the deep, and we need to understand why actually it's happening. And after that, actually, we took the part for inward transportation as well. And as I told that also, the integration with the shipping floor and the factory is very, very important. Like if there is any, change of destination or any cases like that, you have, one actual single point of contact to go and, to talk about it.
Thank you.
I think also that's an interesting topic because right now, I think for the tier 1 suppliers, we also use, several specific forwarders in specific regions. I think the first purpose for the tier 1 supplier is the cost so far. So probably we need to clarify the relationship, between the forwarder and the regional logistics team. Sometimes the cooperator, tier 1 suppliers also have the professional regional team to handle this kind of integration solution. So my question is, what's the advantage we should ask the provider to provide integrate solution to us? What's the more benefit from them? Just now, Jason also showed some logistics saving or optimization projects. But from the tier 1 supply side, we also, from the regional team, we also have some capability to do this kind of integration proposal by ourselves. So what's the more benefit from you can provide to us?
For my side, I can share with you my experiences because Christoph mentioned about the area that we can improve. Is because for the tier 1 suppliers, especially we still have a lot of import from Europe to China. And different plants have different many suppliers within Europe. Last year we did a couple of projects is to how to help the China tier 1 suppliers to optimize its pre-carriage in Europe to stand in order to reduce their pre-carriage cost. Because at the moment, the ocean freight from Europe to China is very cheap. But if you look at the cost, the pre-carriage, the trucking, is still very expensive in Europe. How we can to improve on the European side on the pre-carriage to have more consolidation, or maybe combined with existing the logistics provider network to optimize flow. Then it can be an area to help the customer to reduce the logistic cost. And we think this is the way forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for everyone for answering there. Any questions? Oh, sorry, right in the front here. How could I miss it?
This question is for any one of the panel members. Greg Borisay from the Port of Portland, Oregon, United States. As you look at your supply chain improvement processes, what types of metrics are you using now, and what types of indicators are you using that perhaps are different from traditionally transit time, cost? We in the port, for instance, always looked at vehicles moved per hour or vehicles moved per shift when we worked with Toyota and Hyundai and other auto manufacturers. We've changed now our metrics to look at damage-free moves per shift or something along those lines, and small changes in the way that we've handled our business come out of that. Can you give examples of similar changes in metrics in your different businesses?
It's a very, very good question, because actually when I was talking a little bit, challenges in China, I a little bit, focus on this, standardization and, visibility, because where actually, you can, you need to do, some, performance measurement, which is actually one of our definitely challenges in China. When we, set KPIs in general, as a provider, most of the time we come together with our customer, and we set some KPIs. But regarding the, of course, what's important is that we definitely, look at our KPIs in terms of, in general, 4 categories, which are quality, time. Even sometimes, our customers also would like to get to know, regarding emissions. And recently, I actually attended one performance KPI meeting, and what we have been discussing is that the first thing is also what's important when we set the KPIs, the business objective of the company. How they want to be competitive. It's responsiveness, or it's more regarding the quality. If it's matter quality, of course you check damage ratio. But if the matter is just being very responsive to the market, of course we check the time. How fast we send the units. So I hope that I did a bit to answer your question.
For the tier 1 suppliers, I think there are some traditional metrics we are focused on is spending, timing, and also quality. But right now, I think we are also more focused on the payment term, the key length PPM, and some PORs, and also especially for the contingency plan, response time right now is also for one of the key items we will consider in our matrix. Thank you.
Thank you also for the question. I think we'll have time for one more question, if there is one. Okay, we'll have it right here in the corner. Sorry, yeah.
想问一下徐先生，就是你刚刚谈到了那个1月份开始。
You just talked about starting from January in Sichuan province. The Sichuan province decided to impose restrictive policies, and starting from this month, Chongqing also started to impose restrictive policies on the purchase of vehicles, on the use of vehicles, on trucks. So what other alternative ways we can use in order to balance out the cost increase? Well, indeed, this is something we're quite concerned about. As a finished vehicles logistic providers, we're facing a lot of changes in regulations and laws from the government. We're facing the changing demands from the customers day in, day out. If we take a look at the future trend for long-haul transportation, we still need the train as a main way of transportation to reach into the cities like Chengdu or Chongqing. For short-distance transportation, probably we still need the trucks to deliver the finished vehicles to dealers. In short-distance transportations, it is possible to use small-sized transportational vehicles and trucks to deliver, to circumvent some of the restrictive policies on the use of large-scale trucks in transportation. Thank you very much.
I think we're going to probably have more discussion around truck length and regulation throughout the conference. Maybe I think particularly even tomorrow we have some sessions on the CFLP side of the conference. There's plenty more that we could discuss now, but in an effort to sort of bring us back a little bit on schedule, I think we'll end the session here, and I'll let you go and eat lunch, as I'm sure maybe you're as hungry as I am. But before we go, I'd like to give our panel, say thank you again to our panel. Some great presentations and also some interesting Q&A, and I'm sure we can pick that up in the networking. So please, just next door, we'll have lunch served, and we'll see you back here right after that at 2 o'clock.